Breathing life into everyday, ordinary objects. It's the brilliant Bent Objects project by artist Terry Border.
I am Iron Man. Do 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 do.
His creative and humorous photo collections have been published in France, Brazil, China, Russia, the Philippines, and the UK. Let's meet the happy and quirky world of modern artist Terry Border on today's Heart to Heart. Joining us today on Heart to Heart is modern artist Terry Border, who is known for his brilliantly imaginative works of bent art. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Would you like to say hello to our viewers that are watching?
Well, hello, everybody. Nice to see you.
Okay, so I know that you have a very busy schedule in Korea, so I would like to thank you once again for agreeing to come on our show. I'm so excited.
Anytime anybody wants to hear about my work, I'm going to show up and talk about it.
All right, wonderful. So we've got lots of questions, but I'd like to begin with this question. What exactly is bent art?
Bent art is, I use wires basically to make arms and legs. And any ordinary objects around the house, like eggs, toast, I bring it to life. I make those into living characters and pose them in hopefully humorous situations.
So if you could give us an example how you said you
one of my big ones
objects.
is, I started thinking about an egg and a chicken. And maybe I have the egg visiting the mother, has a Mother's Day card in his hand. But he's a little too late because his mother is already a rotisserie chicken in the background. And people, I like that image a lot because people don't know whether they should be sad or laugh. And they end up doing a little bit of both.
But what was your intention, though?
I got to say, I just get excited when I think of a new relationship between objects, between ordinary things. And I thought that would be funny. The weird thing was, as I worked on the photograph, I kind of empathized with my objects to figure out the poses. And by the end of the photograph, I was feeling sad because of this poor egg has lost his mom. And I was kind of sad for it that I put it on the internet and everybody's laughing. Everybody said, oh, that is the funniest thing I've ever seen. It was kind of shocking to me. But any kind of new funny idea I try to create it and share it with the world.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I think when I first took a look at it, I thought it was very cute. I was like, oh, how cute. But then again, as I looked at the chicken more and more, I was like, oh, this is kind of sad.
It is. And that's what I like. It's just something to make you think. And some people can look at it and see maybe deeper meanings. I'm happy for them to feel that way, but I'm just sharing images, putting it out there, and getting feedback from people.
Okay, so just to give our viewers, a chance to have a better idea or understanding of the work that you do, let's take a look at Terry's witty bent art objects, and then we'll continue with our talk. His works reflect our lives and social phenomena. We see in his photos wacky parodies of love and life's futility. So, of course, we all know that you use ordinary objects, as you said, everyday life objects and you kind of humanize it, you give life to it, and you even try to deliver or add metaphorical messages to it. You've done tons of projects and you've created so many bent artwork. Do you remember your very first one? How did you actually come to create your very first bent art?
One of the first ones was I used to work as a baker in a big grocery store. And on the way back from lunch hour one time, I saw in the produce area they had the real lemons, big basket of real lemons, right next to a little box of the fake lemons full of lemon juice. And I thought, what an insult to real lemons. These fake lemons are right there. So I started thinking about the relationship. What is a fake lemon to a real lemon? It's not alive. Maybe it would be some kind of a doll, but it's a life-size doll. So then I created the image of the lemon opening up a mailed package that they had ordered, and it was a fake lemon in there. And in the background, you could see his door, and he has propped up a chair against the door so nobody could come inside. It's a very private moment. He has ordered this fake lemon and for romantic purposes. It's kind of risque, but when people really enjoy it, and I can't explain it any more than that. Just a strange idea I went with.
I don't know. I can't imagine how you come up with these unique and creative ideas.
Too much coffee. Mainly too much coffee. I drink a lot of coffee, and I walk around the supermarket, and I try to see broccoli in a new way or carrots in a new way. And sometimes the ideas just pop in my head.
I'm sure you have kind of developed this habit of looking at everything that you pass by. So do you have a habit?
I do, but I think that's a habit everybody can have creative-wise. When we're little kids, we're very playful. We have big imaginations. As we grow older, we shut that down to be practical. We kind of censor ourselves. We don't think that way anymore. I think I've kind of learned to stop. I don't censor myself. I let my thoughts just roam free. And I think we could all do that creatively if you just give yourself a chance. But when you do that, you can make art.
Is there a particular bent art creation that you've created that remains meaningful to you, most meaningful to you, and why?
Well, I really am proud of one of, I asked my fans on the internet, what should I use next for an object? And they said an ice cube, of course, because fans like to challenge you. And so I drilled little holes in the ice cube to put the arms and legs in there. And he is lifting weights. And he's looking at a picture of a boat that hit an iceberg. And the boat is sinking. So he is dreaming about becoming an iceberg. And there's a little saying that says, if you can dream it, you can achieve it. So it's a motivational message for us, but it ends up being a dark ending.
But I'm sure, I mean, you photograph from the beginning to the end. I've seen where you worked on like 10 hours on a project and you've edited it down to like 5 minutes. Wasn't it difficult to work with ice though?
It was. I actually had to photograph it in our kitchen, right next to our freezer, and between photographs I would shoot it with my camera, then I'd put the ice cube in the freezer and go back and forth.
I see.
But it's fun. It's a good challenge.
Do people give you any challenges? Was there like a challenge or an idea that your fans gave you that you haven't yet gotten to yet?
It took a long time for chicken bones. They said chicken bones, but I finally ended up, I did do it. I have a picture of a drumstick sitting on a park bench and 2 chicken bones jogging in front of it. And I think of the chicken leg as being a little bit meaty, and the chicken bones are fit people passing me by.
All right. Has anyone inspired you? Who actually influenced you?
There was an artist, Alexander Calder, and he was the inventor of the mobile. And he also did wire sculptures. He made a thing called Calder Circus back in the 1930s that all the artists in Paris would visit, and he would put on a show for them. And he is a big influence.
I see.
Just like fine. And fellows look and find the sunshine. I always look and find the rain. Some fellows make a winning sometimes. I never even make a game. Oh, believe me, I'm always chasing rainbows. I'm watching for a little bluebird in the
Now, I've read that you majored in fine art photography and you also worked as a commercial photographer for many years. Now, your artistic creations went viral through your blog. It's called Bent Object Projects. And you became even more popular, especially when you appeared on television shows and in magazines across the US and China and France, Germany, and the UK, I believe. So what got you to actually start this in the very beginning? Because you have had many other jobs.
Yes, I have. But I've always liked creating things. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a toy maker or inventor. And as I grew up, I decided to be a photographer. And I got a fine arts degree. I got out into the real world. I wanted to be practical and be a famous commercial photographer. Once I started doing that, though, my heart wasn't in it. I knew right away. But I did it for several years. Finally, but it was unfulfilling making photographs that other people had planned. I wanted to do that myself. So eventually I quit and did my art on the side. And I just followed my instincts, my love of creating things. And finally, when I started doing that, my career took off.
I see. Now, I'm sure that you have many interesting experiences because you work with so many different objects. In a way, I guess you can call them ordinary objects, but again, you have to be creative. So from all the work that you've created so far, is there like an incident or an experience that you remember to be special that you can share with us today?
I can't think of one, but I can tell you people picture me just peacefully making photographs at home. But a lot of times these might take 2 days to photograph. And as you can imagine, my objects I'm balancing them on their feet. And there's a lot of times I'll knock one over and they all fall over. So my wife and daughter know at this point, when they hear me start to rant and rave and jump up and down and maybe use a few curse words, they leave the house. But that's always the time when I get really frustrated. That is always when I'm very close to finishing finishing the photograph, and it always works out okay. But there's many rough patches.
So it can take up to a couple of days to actually create something and photograph it.
Yes, I try to make it look simple, but between getting all the props, a lot of times I have to make things. Out of wood or plastic or whatever, and then it takes several hours to light one of these things. I move lights around on objects until it looks just right. And at least 2 days on most of them.
I'm sure that many of your viewers are hoping to actually have the chance to see your bent art or artwork in person. I understand that your first exhibit in Korea is underway.
Yes.
Yeah, so could you give us, some detailed information about that?
Well, it's at the Savina Museum. It'll be here in Seoul from now until December 30th. It's 63 images, and they're huge images. They've blown up. Also, a lot of my objects I've recreated. They have them displayed in very imaginative ways. It's 3 floors. And there's just a lot to see.
Sounds very interesting. I think kids will love it as well. Yeah,
kids really
love
do.
It.
Yeah, and it's been great to meet people who appreciate my work there at the museum, and I can show them around. And there have been a lot of children.
Now, as I was doing some research on the creations that you've created, your artwork, I came across, I mentioned earlier briefly about how you filmed something. It actually took you like 10 hours to complete it, but it was edited down to about 5 minutes. It's called The End of a Relationship. And there's actually ramen in it. And I heard that that was made especially for your exhibit in Seoul.
Yes, Savina sent a big box of objects that are especially meaningful to Korean people. And so one of the things I chose, I had never had ramen noodles before.
Never?
Believe it or not, I had never had them. So they sent me, I think, 4 or 5 packages. When one day for lunch, I had nothing else for lunch. I figured, well, I'll cook some ramen noodles. I got the water hot, and I put the noodles in, and, the big brick of noodles, which I'd never seen before, and it floated. And I thought, well, that's like a raft. I wonder if I can make an image about a raft. And then after a few minutes, of course, it starts breaking apart. And I was thinking, that is the worst kind of raft you want to be on, that breaks apart in boiling water. So that was the idea I had was, it took about 12 hours to make that image of 2 eggs on a ramen noodle raft breaking up in hot water.
Terry Border, an artist who turns everyday objects into art. Many people love his art for its unconventional style and off-the-wall ideas. Are you curious about his artistic conviction and interesting episodes from his career? Stay tuned. Do you by chance have like a special know-how when it comes to taking photos, photo taking, or something that you especially focus on when you take photos of your creations, of your artwork?
Well, I was a commercial photographer for many years, so I know a lot about lighting and that kind of thing. For any photographers out there, if you wanted to try something like this, you get low at the eye level of your objects, even if they're tiny little figures. You get low, treat them like people, and I try to make the lighting dramatic. Have the lights come in from the side. I like a lot of shadows, and it adds a lot of depth to the pictures.
And what happens after you finish taking, pictures, the photographs? Since you work a lot with, food, do you ever eat it, or do you ever?
It depends. I mean, a lot of times I'm working 10 hours, so obviously the food is not going to be good at the end of the day. But there are some times where I will, like the egg photo I was talking about, the egg meeting, seeing the chicken.
The mom,
Yeah, I had everything set up, the lighting and the camera. So after I had everything set up, I went to the grocery store. I bought the rotisserie chicken, brought it home, clicked the camera, And then I took the chicken into the dining room and we had dinner.
Okay, you and your family, the whole family?
I try to do that. Now, if the wires are in the food, I don't care to eat like that. But there's a lot of times I made one photograph with a banana split off to the side, and we had a banana split right after I finished this
Nice.
photo.
But don't you ever feel bad when you do throw away, your creations after you create something? I mean, it's after all your creation. It's a piece of art. I mean, what do you do?
Well, I don't feel too bad because I think of the final piece of art as the photograph. The food is just a tool to get to that point. But there are some things that I have kept. I photographed a cupcake one time, and afterwards I put it on a shelf. It looked the same after 8 years.
Wow.
Because cupcakes, it just kind of dried up, and the frosting is just sugar. So it actually looked the same as it did from 8 years ago.
So do you still have the cupcake?
I threw it away earlier this year because we thought we were moving.
Poor cupcake.
Yes, I'm sorry I threw her away.
Could have stayed a little longer.
She could have been there indefinitely.
Yeah. Also, I came across a photograph of a bag of squid and peanuts. And you said that you might use that for your children. I know you're working on children's books as well.
Yeah, I do a lot of children's books. My first children's book was called Peanut Butter and Cupcake. And so I was walking through a convenience store here in Seoul, and I saw, was it peanut butter and squid? And I put that on my Facebook, that would be my next children's book. And people in the U.S. who had never heard of that, they about hit the roof.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting idea. I think I'm going to have to buy some and try it. And who knows, it might end up in a book.
Yeah, I even saw comments saying yuck.
Yes.
About the combination.
Well, I've got to see, I felt the same way, but I've talked to numerous people now who say that it is a good thing. So I'll give it a try.
It's actually not that bad. It's not that bad. And I guarantee it's not going to be just dried squid, but I'm sure there has been some flavor added to it, like a buttery flavor or a honey flavor, something like that.
I will try. I'll try anything once.
Which may sound even worse. But so I've seen many of your artwork. There was one of a very old-looking potato with things growing on it. It was in like black and white.
Yeah.
And I've noticed you work a lot with peanuts as well.
Yeah, I think peanuts and people have some things in common because we like to put up defenses, kind of a shell to protect ourselves. And but once you get through that shell, it's a soft little tender peanuts, and that's kind of like us. That's kind of like, I think of eggs as kind of like people like that too. That we have a little shell we put on to protect ourselves from other people. But once you get past that, we're pretty soft inside.
And I'd also like to ask you about how you add the titles, because the titles are quite interesting as well. So do you usually create something and add a title to it later, or do you think of a title first and then kind of work from there?
Usually right after I photograph the object, before I put it on the internet, I will it only takes about 20 minutes, and I'll think about just the funniest title that amuses me. And the funny thing is, people think I make the photograph to match the title, which makes me seem a lot more clever than I really am. If I do the title afterwards, it just amuses me, and people do enjoy the puns. I like wordplay and puns.
We're down to our very last question. I'd like to ask you about your artistic philosophy and perhaps about your future plans.
Well, my philosophy, I try to amuse myself. I think if I can amuse myself, there'll be somebody out there on the internet or in the world that also will share my amusement. And it's a way for me to connect with other people. People write me on the internet, and I'm able to meet all new fans and new people. I don't try to teach anybody or hit anybody over the head with a meaning. Sometimes they can find meanings in my work. Sometimes they're meant to be there. Sometimes people are imagining. But I just want people to enjoy my work.
Any future plans?
Yeah, I'm working on next year's book already. And I do about one kid's book a year. I just recently, 2 days ago, my latest children's book is available, called Merry Christmas Peanut.
Yes.
And it's all about a family of peanuts visiting grandmother for Christmas. No overt religious story or anything. It's just amusing. Peanuts the Peanut family meet problems one after another, but they overcome them, and they eventually make it to Grandma's house.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to thank you once again for joining us today, despite your very, very hectic and busy schedule here in Korea. I hope that you continue to amuse people with your witty artwork, bent art, and yes, wish you the best of luck in the future as well. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.